Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Have you ever wondered why there's no post-game show after the Super Bowl? Obviously, you have your pre-game performances that take place prior to the game. And you have the halftime show, which is the greatest music spectacle of the year that routinely draws higher ratings than the game itself. So naturally, you think the Super Bowl would do a post-game show, right? After the final play of the game, you have a post-game concert that appeals to the very large crowd of people that watch the game specifically for the entertainment and non-football aspect of it. On paper, it makes sense. So why hasn't the NFL and the Super Bowl ever done this? Well, they have. And it was a complete and utter disaster. On January 26, 2003, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won their first Super Bowl in franchise history, defeating the Oakland Raiders by a final score of 48-21. It was a dominant defensive performance, with the Buccaneers intercepting Rich Gannon 5 times, and with the team scoring 3 pick-sixes. For long-suffering Bucs fans who went over a quarter century without seeing their team do much of anything, they finally got to experience life at the top of the mountain. But before their team could officially hoist the Vince Lombardi Trophy, a post-game concert was held. And the execution and aftermath were so bad that it never happened again. This is the story behind one of the worst broadcasting moments in the history of the big game. Before I talk about the performance in question, we need some context to understand the league's motives, and why such a performance even happened in the first place. And to understand what happened at Super Bowl XXXVII, we need to jump back in time 1 year to Super Bowl XXXVI. Most people remember this Super Bowl for being the very first title by the New England Patriots, as they pulled off the shocking upset to defeat the St. Louis Rams and the greatest show on turf. However, the Super Bowl was also filled with more music and more entertainment than any other Super Bowl that preceded it, mainly because of the incredibly patriotic theme to the game in the wake of the terrorist attacks on September 11th. Aside from the halftime show with U2, which might be the greatest and most iconic halftime show of all time, you had Paul McCartney performing before the game, you had a performance of America the Beautiful, which had only been performed at 3 previous Super Bowls, and you had another pregame performance featuring the likes of Barry Manilow and Patti LaBelle. And the result? You had ratings that were through the roof. The game had an average television audience of over 86 million people, which was an increase over the previous Super Bowl. And the game at its peak had the largest television audience since Super Bowl XXXII. Now, this is a prime example of correlation not equaling causation, because even though it's true that this Super Bowl had higher ratings and had more musical performances, it's also true that this Super Bowl was decided on the final play of the game and was one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time. I think we can assume that the latter was the reason for the great ratings, rather than the former. But seeing the success of Super Bowl XXXVI, executives had an idea. What if we continue to go all in on the musical elements? Along with the usual pregame concerts at the tailgate party and the halftime show, there were going to be performances on the field before the game with Santana, Michelle Branch, and Beyoncé. For the first time ever, you were going to have Celine Dion singing God Bless America. I'm just going to ignore the fact that she's Canadian. And for the first time ever, they were going to air a post-game concert featuring Bon Jovi. I don't know whether this was the NFL's call or ABC's call, but from the press release that I could find, it seemed like it was a mutual decision. When the final whistle sounded, Bon Jovi was going to play It's My Life, set to a video montage of highlights from the game. It was going to be a one-song concert for the purposes of television. As for how the show went, well, let's just say it was not good. Before I go any further, I want to emphasize one thing in particular. The show itself was not bad. Bon Jovi sounded good, and I love Bon Jovi. They're one of my all-time favorite bands, and I've seen them many times in concert. By no means was this a bad performance or a colossal flop on the Super Bowl stage from the perspective of the music itself. This was not a Christina Aguilera situation at Super Bowl 45 where she forgot the words to the national anthem. This was not a Super Bowl 38 controversy, and this was not a Black Eyed Peas situation at Super Bowl 45 where Fergie performed Sweet Child of Mine while also trying to mimic the mating call of dogs. If you ever heard Bon Jovi perform It's My Life live, this sounded exactly the same. However, the general consensus about the performance and its placement in the show was confusion. This seemed like the NFL and ABC trying to have a one shining moment situation, where you have a montage of the championship set to an inspirational song. As a side note, to learn more about the history of One Shining Moment and how it was written at first for the Super Bowl before it became the anthem to March Madness, click the card in the upper right corner. But here, it just doesn't work. The thing with One Shining Moment is that the song is specifically about basketball. You associate that song with March Madness, and if you didn't know anything about it going in, you know right away what you're in for when you hear the opening line of "The Ball is Tipped." Though That's My Life, it's not really a song about winning a championship, and it has nothing to do with football. It's a song about living your life to the fullest and taking advantage of each day. It's not completely out of place. It's not like they did this montage over You Give Love a Bad Name or Wanted Dead or Alive or anything like that. Of all the popular songs that Bon Jovi has, this is the one that fits the best. But that still doesn't mean it fits well. The whole mixing of the highlights and audio with the performance was somewhat awkward. And it didn't help that a good chunk of the stadium, understandably so, had emptied out by this point, making the atmosphere somewhat lifeless, even though this song is about celebrating life. Still, this wasn't the part that made this idea a disaster, because again, the performance itself was perfectly fine and was typical Bon Jovi. The disastrous part was the fact that there was a very clear problem and an extremely bad oversight on everyone's part that you might have realized already. Because the result of airing this concert was the exact opposite of what ABC wanted. In terms of achieving its purpose, let's just say it failed miserably. The Super Bowl lead-out program is the most coveted time slot that a television program can have. It's the very first thing that airs right after the Super Bowl, so naturally, people leave their televisions on after the Super Bowl and get a glimpse of that program. While the ratings are obviously not as high as the actual game, they are still absurdly high, especially by the standards of television programs today. And tons of pilot episodes, from the A-Team to the Wonder Years to Undercover Boss, got their start right after the Super Bowl. If you want to learn more about one of those programs that did just that, with ABC airing the Wonder Years after Super Bowl XXII to great success, click the card in the upper right corner. And ABC was going to try a strategy that Fox tried a few years before at Super Bowl XXXIII with The Simpsons and Family Guy, and that NBC tried at Super Bowl XXVIII with The Good Life and The John LaRoquette Show. And that was if they were going to air two shows right after the game. They were going to show an episode of Alias, and we're going to follow that up with the first ever episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. I think you might be able to see where I'm going with this, and why this was a disaster that literally everyone could have seen coming. When you're airing not one, but two shows after, and your goal is to attract an audience, you need to maximize the probability that people are going to watch and keep their eyes glued to the television screen. You do that by airing it as close to the end of the Super Bowl as possible. What you don't do is have an entire post-game concert that winds up delaying the time the network signs off from Super Bowl coverage. And even though the Super Bowl ended at 10:18 on the East Coast, a very reasonable time, do you want to know what time Alias, the first of the two lead-out programs, aired? 11:15 p.m., almost a full hour after the Super Bowl ended. And keep in mind that Alias is a 45-minute show without commercials, so Jimmy Kimmel Live was not airing until after midnight. I want to put into perspective just how absurdly late that is, especially on the East Coast, when kids are going to bed to get ready for school, and adults are in bed to get ready for work the next day. At Super Bowl 51, the lead-out program was the pilot episode of 24 Legacy. Keep in mind that Super Bowl 51 went into overtime. That pilot episode aired at 11 p.m. Even though the game went into an entire fifth period, it was still able to air before Alias. At Super Bowl 36, the most recent Super Bowl before this one, Fox aired an episode of Malcolm in the Middle. Keep in mind that Super Bowl 36 had the latest start time of any Super Bowl ever, thanks in part to the pregame festivities honoring America. That game started at 6:40, a full 20 minutes after Super Bowl 37 started. And that episode aired at 10:38 p.m., roughly 45 minutes before the lead-out to Super Bowl 37. The lead-out program to Super Bowl 37 was the latest airing lead-out program of all time, and still holds that distinction of being the latest program. So if you were at a bar or at a friend's house to watch the game and party, I'm not sure you were still there literally an hour after the game ended. Now you might be asking yourself a very valid question. Most of the people that watch the Super Bowl are not football fans. They watch for the entertainment, like the commercials and especially the halftime show. Heck, the halftime show usually draws better ratings than the game itself. So why do you think this was a bad idea? Well, here's the thing. Number one, if this was an actual show that people were looking forward to, maybe this could have worked. Look at the Super Bowl halftime show. It's a mini concert featuring tons of stars, and it's a 12 to 13 minute spectacle with fireworks and a ton of pyrotechnics and a ton of songs. This, on the other hand, was one singular song that was being televised. It was a 3-minute performance with no flashy elements whatsoever. In other words, it was exactly like the performances that networks air during pregame shows. And let's just say there's a reason that the pregame shows don't get anywhere near the high ratings that the actual game gets, because there's no spectacle element. If this was treated like a second halftime show where people were incentivized to stick around, maybe this could have worked. But it wasn't. It was your standard one-song concert, although technically the band performed 2 songs, but one was untelevised. But here's what makes this incredibly stupid, and takes this into the territory of one of the most brain-dead ideas in the history of the Super Bowl. I need you to prepare yourselves for this. It's September 5th, 2002, and it's opening day of the season less than 5 months before. The New York Giants are taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And because it's opening day, and because it's the first time ever that the NFL is doing a primetime Thursday night game to kick off the season, the league decided that they were going to go all out and do a pregame concert that was televised. Usually outside of Thanksgiving, the game that gets the highest ratings in the regular season is the opening game. So the same audience that was watching the end of the Super Bowl was watching the opening game of the season. Guess what the pregame concert was? That's right, it was Bon Jovi. And guess what song they played? That's right, they played It's My Life. But hold on, it gets even worse. Because remember how I said that the other game that usually attracts non-football fans is the Thanksgiving game? Well, guess what? In 2002, the Detroit Lions played the New England Patriots on Thanksgiving. Guess who performed the halftime show at this game? You guessed it, Bon Jovi. And guess what song they played? They played It's My Life. They did the exact same show that they did at Times Square for opening day. At this point, it was like the NFL was trying to give us bad medicine by having Bon Jovi do the same thing over and over again. You could have told me that the NFL changed their rules and pregame policies and that they were now requiring teams to play It's My Life in its entirety after the national anthem before every single game. And honestly, I would have believed you. The line It's Now or Never turned out to be the biggest lie in the history of music, because a more accurate depiction of this rate was It's Now or, hey, you can catch it 2 months from now. No big deal. So let me get this straight. The geniuses that made this decision didn't stop to think, hey, wait a second. We did this already this season on multiple occasions. We showed this to pretty much the exact same audience multiple times. Why would they want to watch it again? Not only did the NFL and ABC air this Bon Jovi one-song televised concert after Super Bowl XXXVII, but they did it literally 2 months before. And if you missed it, don't worry, because they did it 2 months before that. This was, in essence, a rerun of a rerun. If you were going to do this, why not pick a different band? Or heck, if you were so insistent that it had to be Bon Jovi, why not have them pick a different song? This whole thing makes no sense. How did they seriously think that this was a good idea to show literally the exact same thing? And it's not like there was any element of shock value that got people intrigued. It's Bon freaking Jovi! What you see is what you get. Once you've heard the song live once, that's it. That's how they've always played it. That's how they're going to play it until the end of time. You don't need to see the same performance 3 times. I don't know how this didn't cross the minds of the executives, but it was absolutely baffling. What does all this mean? Because shockingly, people didn't want to watch a one-song concert that they had already seen before, and because literally the past 36 years of evidence show that the ratings decline more the further away you get from the final play of the game, the Super Bowl XXXVII lead-out program bombed hard. And when I say it bombed hard, I don't mean that it was disappointing or a slight decrease from the previous year, or that it was a bit below the network's high expectations. I mean it was historically bad. The lead-out program at Super Bowl XXXVII set all kinds of records, but not the good kind. Despite the fact that the game drew over 88.6 million viewers, which was the most watched Super Bowl since Super Bowl XXXII, and despite the fact that the game had a peak audience of 138.9 million viewers, which was the highest peak of all time, only 17.3 million people tuned in to watch Alias. We have records on the viewing audience of every lead-out program since Super Bowl XXII. Alias was the least watched lead-out program in that time stretch. This graph shows the number of viewers to watch each lead-out show from Super Bowl XXII to Super Bowl XXXVII, so covering the last decade and a half. You can see Alias way at the bottom, way below everything else. The last program to have that low of a number immediately following the Super Bowl was after Super Bowl IX all the way back in 1975, when NBC aired The News. As a side note, if you want to learn more about that Super Bowl, click the card in the upper right corner. It was that bad. And it gets even worse, because now we have to talk about the TV share. TV share is a metric that shows what percentage of people that are currently watching television are watching that show. As an easy example, if 100 million people are watching television at any given time, and 25 million people are watching your program, then the TV share would be 25%. Usually, the lead-out program has a share somewhere in the ballpark of 25%. As for Alias, its TV share was a mere 20%. It was the lowest share in the 37-year history of the Super Bowl, and to date, remains the lowest share in the history of the Super Bowl lead-out program. I know it's shocking that the ratings were absolutely atrocious for a show that already was not doing well in the ratings, and for a show that was airing a full hour after the Super Bowl, but the end result was a complete disaster. And yes, the game itself was not very good and was a blowout, but that hasn't stopped other programs from doing well. Heck, 2 years before, Super Bowl XXXV was decided by even more points than Super Bowl XXXVII, and that lead-out program had over 250% more viewers than Alias. Granted, Survivor was a cultural phenomenon at that point, but still, no matter how you want to slice it, this was a disaster. And naturally, because of all of this, the Bon Jovi concert at the end of Super Bowl XXXVII was the first, and to date, only post-game concert in the history of the Super Bowl. That raises the question, could something like this work again? Honestly, with the right execution, it could. if you treat it like the Super Bowl halftime show and go crazy with the production value, and if you did the post-game concert as the final thing before signing off, so you did the trophy presentation and then the concert, so that the moment the concert ends, the lead-out program immediately starts after, this might actually have a chance at working. As an example, if you had someone like Justin Bieber or Ariana Grande doing a halftime show-level performance for the post-game concert, I'm fairly confident that you get high ratings. But the execution at Super Bowl 37 was so poor and so not thought out whatsoever that this never had a chance at working, especially when you already did the same exact thing twice this season. And for Bon Jovi and ABC, at the end of the day, this unique idea was shot down in a blaze of glory. Get your official Jaguar Gamer 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 PM Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGamer9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.